Thank you very much for that presentation, Senator, highlighting the challenges and opportunities. And I must say I was particularly impressed at the kind of indicators you use. For example, the time it takes to commute as opposed to the number of miles of roads or rail built. It's a much smarter approach, and I commend it to those of us in the room who work on infrastructure in Canada. It's a very good approach. We are honoured to have as our next speaker the Honorary Minister Amma I. Pepple, who is the Federal Minister of Land, Housing and Urban Development. She was, your resume has your date of birth. My mother told me that a woman's age is no one's business but her own. So I will skip that. But she was born to the Perukli Royal House in Grand Bonny Island in Rivers State. Has a tremendous education, including Archdeacon Crowther Memorial Girls' School in Port Harcourt, the College of Further Education in Newcastle upon Tyne, England, the University of Ile-Ife, Nigeria, where she read political science and graduated with first-class honours. She also has her Master of Science degree from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London in the United Kingdom. On 16th of June 2008, she was appointed the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. She is an awardee of the National Honour of Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and as a reward for excellence and dedicated service to her fatherland, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria appointed her a Minister of the Government of the Federal Republic in July 2011 and assigned her her current portfolio. Minister, we're very much looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to define what urbanization is. We all know what it is. But I would like to ask a question. Why do people move to the urban areas? We all know they move in search of jobs. They move in search of a better life. So they move to the urban areas. They go there with a rising expectation. And it has been projected that in the foreseeable future, as high as 3% of the urban population growth will occur in Asia, Africa, and to a lesser extent in Latin America and the Caribbean. Of course, in Nigeria, we have a population of 167 million. It is therefore one of the most urbanizing countries in Africa. What are the urbanization trends in Nigeria? From 10% urbanization rate in 1950, the figure has skyrocketed to about 50%, meaning a gain of 40% in 63 years. And by 2025, the country's urbanization rate is projected to rise to 60%. Today, Nigeria is estimated to have over 1,000 urban areas, and these include the capitals of the 36 states, including the Federal Capital Territory. Just listened to the Minister, and the 774 local government headquarters, as well as a few notable urban corridors spread across our 6 geopolitical zones. Challenges of housing and urban development. Nigeria is said to have a housing deficit of 16 to 17 million units. But the issues that relate to land, housing, and urban development are in the concurrent list, so the state governments also have responsibility for it. The deficit is so high, and we estimate that we need at least $350 billion to be able to fill that, to be able to provide the kind of houses that will reduce the deficit. And there's also the issue of basic infrastructure services, inadequate urban development planning, and like I said earlier on, there are very few jobs for all those who move to the urban areas. We have put in place in the ministry some policy measures to address these challenges. Before now, we didn't have any policy on housing or urban development, but when I came on board in June last year, We put the policies together, both the housing and urban development policies, and the Federal Executive Council approved both policies in June last year. We are also reviewing our National Building Code and ensuring that people who build houses that collapse, there is some form of penalty that is attached to it. In the ministry, we have established a PPP unit, a private-public partnership unit, and I'm very happy to say, and proud, I would say, to say that we have a properly certified PPP expert in the ministry, a lady, an architect. She was certified in the Washington Institute. So this is how because we don't have enough funds to meet the deficit, it is one way that we try to provide housing. And I'll just spend a few minutes to talk about how our PPC policy works. If you want to collaborate with us, perhaps on a contractor financial basis or otherwise, you have to write to the ministry. When you write, I'll pass it on to the PPP unit. They will assess the company, the ability and all that. And then what we do is to provide the land for you, for the investor. We give you land, and it could be in any state of the federation in the country. And when you build, if the off-takers need, because we have a huge population, we have off-takers for all the houses that we build, especially for the low-income group, where we are trying to ensure that is why we're trying to ensure that our houses are accessible and affordable. After building the houses, what we do is that you give us, the investor will give us the cost of the land, because we pay compensation on the land we have. And then after you have sold the houses, you give the government 10% of the profits on the houses, and you keep the rest. I don't want to go to all the policies that have been put in place to be able to ensure that the investor is not put at any disadvantage, especially even with the FIPA that had been signed yesterday. The investor is properly protected. We also promote intergovernmental cooperation with state governments. I'm happy to say my colleague, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, we call him governor, I call him landlord. Even just last week, he gave some parcels of land to the ministry in the FCT, and also to the two parastatals of the ministry, the Federal Housing Authority and the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. I'm glad to say also that most of the state governors have been very, very cooperative, and I have a list of letters that we have received from all the state governors providing land for us, which we are able to give to our partners. We also collaborate with other state government agencies. Like in Rivers State, we are doing a housing project for health workers. We are also looking at doing a housing project for teachers in the state. The Federal Ministry of Finance, with the $300 million loan that has been made by the World Bank, is setting up a company that the mortgage refinancing company that will be able to provide mortgages for people who are off-takers to the land, the houses that we build. We have other products too, which we have put in place to try to encourage Nigerians to buy and own their own houses, especially those in the lower income range. In the civil service, we have a National Housing Fund, into which every civil servant at both federal and state government contributes 2.5% of their salaries. And this fund is managed by Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. And you can access funds through that mortgage bank, and we give it at 6% interest and over a period of between 15 to 20 years, depending on how many years you still have in the service. We have another product, the Cooperative Housing Financing Scheme, through which we encourage people in the informal sector to join cooperatives so that through their cooperatives they will be able to have access to houses. We are rolling out in Lagos about 500 housing units. That is our the first set of houses built under the cooperative financing scheme. And we want to launch that product in other states of the Federation so that those in the informal sector and the lower income group will have access to funds and be able to own their own houses. Policy measures that we have put in place. I'm happy to say that last month we attended the Governing Council of UN Habitat, and I was elected the President of the Governing Council. And at the same time, we signed an agreement with UN Habitat, and where Nigeria is championing the partnership for a new African urban agenda with a $3 million contribution. The Ondo State government is also contributing $2 million for different types of projects with the UN Habitat, technical assistance. Then we have cooperation with DFID, with World Bank. I've talked about the loan for the mortgage refinancing, the mortgage refinancing company. We are also working with Cities Alliance, and is assisting us in doing an urbanization review for the country. Let me go quickly why we are here, the reason why we are here. Investment opportunities in the housing sector. We need people to set up small and medium-scale industries to process local raw materials such as wood, clay, bricks, glass, tiles, processing of hardware and software, building materials, security systems and devices, fire prevention systems. Paint industry, even though we have a few, we'll do it a little more, considering our housing deficit. Roofing sheets industry, wood factory to manufacture doors and wooden fittings, sanitary ware factories, quarry sites. We have a lot of granite deposits. We also need dredging activities in the Niger Delta region, where obviously there is shortage of land. So we would like people to come in, dredge the water and provide more land for us. We also have opportunities in the construction of residential housing estates on sites and services, prototype housing scheme, and we are looking at also areas of slum upgrading and urban renewal. We focus a lot on housing, and I think we've put housing on a pedestal that it can now grow. But we need a little assistance in the area of slum upgrading, and we are planning a stakeholders forum on slum upgrading this quarter or early next quarter. We also need investment on real estate and trust schemes for housing, management and maintenance of housing estates, office building, public facilities, construction of hostels which are in short supply in our universities. We also need people to come in, provision of primary and secondary housing infrastructure, roads, water supply, electricity, leasing of construction equipment. The next few slides are some of the houses that we have done. The first one, this is from an American company, the light steel gauge. The steels go through a machine and they come up like that. We use them for the body and the roof. And then their structures is on the left-hand corner there. The finished product is this, and we are able to deliver a 3-bedroom semi-detached house for 6 million naira. So if we do a 2-bedroom, we hope we can deliver for about 4.5, and one bedroom for maybe 1.5 million naira. We just put this one just to show what some of the estates that we have had. I continue with the investment opportunities, infrastructure financing, housing development financing, establishment of estate development companies and security organizations to provide security and helping us to build capacity. We want our young ones, those who have moved to the urban areas in search of jobs and a better life, to be able to have skills that can enable them get sustainable jobs, not just because if you go to, I remember the professor who made the presentation on mines, talking about Professor Kulia. One of the first retreats that the president had for ministers and permanent secretaries when the government was inaugurated was on job creation. And I remember I had gone to a program outside. I was coming in just as they started the first session, and Professor Kulia was the first speaker. And I was so elated when he said, one area where you can provide thousands and thousands of jobs is in the housing sector. I nearly flipped out of my skin. I almost jumped up in my seat. Because when people talk about job creation, we don't talk about housing. But we all know, if you go to a building construction site, you will see people in primary employment and in secondary employment, those selling water in our environment, selling food today. I remember when my kids were in England going to school, I went to visit them once, and I had to take them food at the construction site where they were doing their holiday jobs. So now that I'm in housing, I appreciate better what I did for them then. Then further areas of opportunities for investment, provision of solar, wind, and hydroelectricity. I know the government is handling the issue of power very seriously, and I was very happy with the presentation made by Peter to show that there is a lot going on in the provision of electricity. But in the estates, the president has directed that we, as much as possible, we should try and use solar lights to provide security lights on the street lights in the estates. And we are also in our steel structures I showed in that estate. We were doing it as a pilot project, 60 units, but by the time we took some people to look at it, we had 80 off-takers. So there, we are trying to do waste to energy. We have a company who wants to do waste to energy for us. So there are many areas, and I'll be ready to talk with any of you. We had an appointment this morning. They didn't show up. So please, we hope Canadian investors are welcome. I know that they are welcome, and we hope to continue to partner with you all over a long term in our quest to reduce the housing deficit in Nigeria. Indeed, I believe the dream of every investor is to have a guaranteed market in a stable operational environment. This surely is what Nigeria is offering to investors, particularly in the housing and urban development sectors. Thank you for your attention.